Welcome to the Behind the Bits podcast. Your host, Scott Curtis, wants to learn everything he can about stand-up comedy and take you along for the ride. Scott and his guests talk serious about comedy in every episode. Behind the Bits will uncover knowledge from different perspectives on subjects such as writing and performing stand-up comedy, as well as booking shows and the comedy life. If you're thinking about becoming a stand-up comic, already in the comic game, or a comedy nerd, Behind the Bits is the show for you. Now, let's get Behind the Bits.
Hey, BTB buddies. If you're listening to this podcast as it comes out, which is December 1st of 2020, I'm excited to be a featured performer as well as a featured podcast at IndiePod's United Virtual Summit this year. The summit is currently going on from Sunday through Thursday of this week and has some great podcasts and performers. I'll be closing out the week with a comedy performance at 5 p.m. Eastern and Behind the Bits being streamed live at 6:30 p.m. Eastern. I'm excited to be talking to my friend Joe Byers about his efforts to help comedians learn and connect during the pandemic. You will need a ticket for both of these. A free ticket will get you a link to watch the podcast live stream, and a paid ticket will get you access to my stand-up set as well as all the other performances and workshops. Head over to IndiePodsUnited.com for tickets and info on all the great content throughout this week. My guest today was the winner of the Dick Purton Comedy Showcase and was a blogger for the Huffington Post. He's a host of his own podcast, The Dwoskin Show, and is a co-founder of a popular Twitter app called #Roundup. I mean, what more can you want out of a comic? It's Jeff Dwoskin. Jeff, I appreciate you taking the time to talk to me today. I'm excited to talk to you.
Scott, when I heard you wanted to talk to me, I cleared my schedule. So
yeah,
anybody who won the best interview award.
Yeah. And I got
why
a
would
JPEG.
I pass that up?
Yeah. You know, the fact that they sent me a JPEG is just honor enough. Just being nominated was cool and being in the finals was neat. But I lobbied hard for the votes and nobody else did, obviously. So I won. So there you go.
That's how I feel. Not being nominated was just an honor.
Yeah.
In itself.
First of all, where are you from, Jeff?
Suburb of Detroit, West Bloomfield.
So you're still at where you're from, pretty much, right?
I am at where I'm from. Yeah.
Okay. That's cool. That's cool. I've done some comedy in Michigan. I've done Kalamazoo and Grand Rapids. So I haven't done Detroit, though.
I've done Kalamazoo once.
Yeah. I love
Grand Rapids
Kalamazoo.
is a beautiful city. I think I was there once for some comedy festival they had there.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
Laugh Fest or something.
Yep. They've got a lot of places to get beer. That's why I like it. So
yes.
So it's nice. So let's talk about when you did your first stand-up act. When did you first do stand-up?
I did my first stand-up. It was probably 2002.
Okay.
I was going to say 12, but then I was like, oh, no, that's not right. My daughter just turned 18, so it was just before she was born. And so I did it as I took a class, a comedy writing class at Mark Ridley's Comedy Castle.
Okay.
And then I went the week before the big show because I wanted to do it before. My actual first time was the week before the actual big 7-minute, everyone came to see me type of thing because I didn't want that to be the first time.
Good
I was
idea.
on stage.
Yeah.
I wanted to have something under my belt.
Yeah.
So.
That's a good idea. So what prompted you to do that? Because I can see, I looked at your LinkedIn profile, and folks, if you don't know what LinkedIn is, it's kind of Facebook for business people. But your LinkedIn profile shows that, you know, you're kind of a overachiever, big brain, bigger ideas. So you were obviously doing stuff before the stand-up. What prompted you to do that?
Well, thank you. That's a great. I appreciate that interpretation.
Yeah. You can quote me on that if you want.
Thanks. I was always funny at work, and I had one of my early entrepreneurial efforts was I started one of the first web development companies in Michigan, in the late 90s.
Uh-huh.
And Mark Ridley's Comedy Castle was one of the websites we did. And one of the pages on their website was comedy classes. So years later, when I was doing some consulting at Quest Communications, everyone was like, "You should take comedy. You should do stand up." And so they kind of, I'm like, I'd already always thought about it, but I didn't know it was like a thing. I didn't, you know what I mean? And so I took the class and never stopped doing it until COVID.
That's great. And so obviously it kind of, after taking the class and doing those first couple performances, it kind of got in your blood pretty quick, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's something, it's addictive. You know, any comedian can tell you that. It's once you start doing it, the thrill of being on stage and getting people to laugh, there's nothing better. Nothing.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you, this is kind of off book, but the fact that you're, kind of an entrepreneurial soul and you create things, do you feel like stand-up kind of gets the brain working to do other things and you feel like you do other things better?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, I think I think it gives me an advantage in a couple ways. One, I'm not afraid to talk to anyone.
Right.
When you're, for those thinking about starting stand-up comedy, like when you're standing in front of 50, 100 people and they're not laughing, and that's going to happen. Talking to a CEO is nothing.
Yeah, no doubt.
Believe me, when you've been through the fire of 300 people looking at you, like you're like, what the hell are you doing on that stage? When you talk to like big shots, where like, can you talk to sea level? And you're like, yeah, I think I can handle that. Because there is nothing worse than being on stage and no one's laughing.
No doubt. It also helps for your podcast too, because you're not afraid to ask anybody to be on it. Because I mean, the worst thing you're going to get is a no, and that's better than complete silence after a punchline.
I think the benefit that I have, maybe not relevant on the first few episodes, but I think my comfort level of doing this, of the podcast and how I sound, was probably fast forwarded based on the fact that I had so much experience on stage.
Yeah.
So I could turn into that person. You can see the difference between your mic and my mic. Mine's actually on a mic stand like I would have on stage.
Yeah.
And I did that on purpose because I wanted to feel like I was on stage when I was recording interviews or doing my podcast, to put me into that mindset of being there.
Well,
I didn't get that from the arm.
That's a good idea. I've actually,
I saw you have one in the background.
I got one here, but I just use that for when I do online comedy and other stuff. But yeah, so that's a neat idea. So thinking about your influences, obviously you had to like comedy before you started doing it. Who were some of the people who really made you think comedy's cool?
The people that I loved early on were Steve Martin, Rodney Dangerfield, Dennis Miller, 80s Dennis Miller.
Yeah.
Okay. It's a very distinct difference.
Yeah, there is. Yeah.
And Saturday Night Live, Dennis, and then that stand-up period of Dennis Miller. I love Rita Rudner. Grew up with Joan Rivers. Gary Shandling was always on in my house because my parents liked them also. So, and Bill Cosby. But this was before everyone.
Right.
It was okay to like Bill Cosby.
Yeah. It's okay to still like the art. You can separate the art from the artist, I think.
Well, at the time we didn't know the issue. We didn't know the impending issues. Right?
Yeah.
So
yeah, no doubt. So thinking, this is something I like to ask everybody simply because I'm a voracious consumer of things that inspire me. So I like to ask everybody, what are you reading, listening to, music that's going on in your life? What's going on in your life media wise that's inspiring you?
The new Bruce Springsteen album.
There you
great.
go. Okay.
Letters to everyone. What is the name? Anyway, it's great. But then also the documentary on Apple Plus is great. I find myself reading books of people that I'm about to interview. So I'm reading a book on the Incredible Hulk. I just read Billy Van Zant's book, Get in the Car, Jane, which is great. And, stuff like that. But I mean, if I were to look at other books that I've read, Hug Your Haters was a good one that I read.
Oh,
It was
okay.
more on customer service,
Uh-huh.
being online, but nothing of interest. Mostly business books is what I read.
Yeah. Yeah, I do the same.
Yeah.
But business books can be fun too.
Yeah, some are really good. Some are
Yeah.
good. Yeah.
Yeah. So, the last question on this is, what would be your top 3 comedy albums or specials?
That's a rough one with only 45 seconds left to go live.
This is a very loose timeline. We're good.
I'm always bad with the very specifics. But I'll tell you the Bill Dwyer one from a long time ago, the Mary Ellen Hooper one from a long time ago.
Mhm.
These were Comedy Central specials. Those were 2 of the ones that really I remembered a lot. And I'm trying to think what other ones there were. I don't know. I love Bill Burr. I mean, that's in terms of recent comics, because that's usually the next question. But like,
Yeah.
I do. I'm trying to think like what comedy. Bill Cosby himself. There's nothing better than that. But again,
Right.
I understand the controversy.
Yeah.
But those were great. Those were the ones that I kind of grew up on and really kind of cling to.
Great. So it's cool that you mentioned Bill Dwyer, because I saw him. It was one of the last shows I saw before the pandemic hit, and very good. You know, he's still an excellent comic.
Oh, Bill Dwyer is great. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. He was the first person I worked with who I had seen his special, and I was like, oh my God, I get to work with someone who's special I saw.
Yeah. Yeah. So before we get offline here to talk real, I wanted to talk about your podcast a little bit, because I listened to a couple episodes before we got going, before we started here. So tell me a little bit about the Jeff Dwoskin Show.
Well, as you can see from the image, it's
Yeah.
sarcasm to learn. No, it's
Yeah.
The Jeff Dwoskin Show was basically my attempt to kind of just channel the creative energy once COVID hit. So
Uh-huh.
I started conceptualizing it late March and putting everything together. And then I put out the first episodes at the end of May.
Mhm.
And so I've been doing it weekly ever since. I released 3 at first. And so it was sort of originally I was going to do something years ago with social media, but you can tell I need to cough, but I don't want to cough.
It's all right. It's cool.
No, I hate when people cough. I'm getting through it without a cough. It's like holding back a sneeze, but
Yeah.
But so I was originally going to do social media, but then, because I have such a strong social media background, but it wasn't lighting my fire. So it's sort of a combination between comedy, trends, pop culture, and social media.
Mhm.
So I do a little social media thing. I do some bits up front. I don't go right into the interview like some do. And then the interviews are all pre-recorded, so they're not happening live or anything like that. And then I focus on, you mentioned hashtag roundup. At the end, I find a hashtag that we had done at some point that is relevant to something maybe that happened in the show,
Mhm.
and read off some tweets from there and then share those tweets on my Twitter page as well. But the interviews are, it's people that I want to talk to, some
Right.
actors, writers, comedians,
Mhm.
so lots of fun people that I enjoy. And then, my theory is, well, if you like what I like, you're going to love the Jeff Dwoskin.
Yeah.
But, I like, and I skew, towards older pop culture. So a lot of some of it's nostalgia. I'm a big fan of Comic-Cons, and I love when we going to Comic-Cons and meeting all the old celebrities or older celebrities and getting pictures with them and their autographs. And you can't see it, but like my whole wall is that. So I almost consider the Jeff Dwoskin Show as my Comic-Con dreams coming to life.
Yeah.
Where I get to actually then talk to these people.
Right.
And, varying lengths. Some people talk for a long time and some are not, but they're all really interesting stories, which is what I think is at the core of everything.
Yeah.
And I love hearing them. So, and then some of the comedian ones are a little different, because the comedian interviews. They don't like to necessarily be interviewed. It's more shtick back and forth, which I have a good time with too. So it's a little more kind of, you're just going back and forth and maybe talking about some things that are a little more current.
Right. Yeah, it's funny. I think your Bob Zaney interview is exactly the same length as my Bob Zaney interview. He cuts out right when he wants to. He's like, okay, gotta go.
Well, we had agreed on a time ahead of time.
Yeah.
The Bob Zaney interview is funny. If you listen to the whole thing, which I encourage all your listeners to listen to my episode with Bob Zaney, but like, it's funny because I was trying to be respectful of the 30-minute time limit. And so it plays, if you listen to it carefully and know it, now that I'm saying what's going on, it's like the end of Lord of the Rings or Return of the King, where there's like 3 endings.
Yeah.
It's like, I was like, all right, well, because I was trying, to be respectful of it, and then it started back up again, and then I wound it back down, and I started it, and then it got started back up again, and so when I was listening back to it, I'm like, there are 3 endings to this show. But it's great because one of the funniest things that happened was in the 3rd end.
Right.
So it was like, it was fun. It was great. It is nice to, reach back to people who probably maybe wouldn't otherwise talk to me.
Yeah.
But when you have a podcast, it's another good reason to start a podcast. People.
Yeah, no doubt. You get to talk to some of your idols, and Bob was one of mine. So that's great. Ken, before we sign off here, where can people find you on the internet besides your 10 million Twitter followers?
JeffDwoskinshow.com or jeffisfunny.com is probably easier for most people. They both go to the same place. And that's the show website. Where you can join my mailing list, listen to any episode there if you want. You can also jump and subscribe from there to, Apple, Amazon, Spotify, wherever you like to listen. Definitely like and subscribe, both to my podcast and to Scott's Behind the Bits. So
there you go. Thank you. I appreciate that.
And so do that. And then on Twitter and Instagram, the show is at Jeff Dwoskin Show. And my personal is Big Macher, which if you make your way to at Jeff Dwoskin Show, it's in the bio.
Yeah.
I don't expect you to know how to spell that.
Oh, that's great. One of the things I wanted to talk about right off the bat is the fact that I know that you pretty much started the stand-up as more of a hobby than anything, but you got good at it because you're winning contests and getting noticed and stuff like that. How did that affect you as far as, did you ever say, hey, I'm just going to put everything else down and be a comic? Or how did that make you feel knowing that you're pretty good?
Well, it made me feel good, but it was frustrating because I didn't have anything that would get me picked for Boston Comedy Festival. You know what I mean? Or anything. Like I never got picked for the festivals, you know what I mean? Or anything like that. I got picked once for one and I got there and I'm like, I couldn't figure out why I was there. I mean, it was not because not funny, but it was just like everybody seemed connected to somebody else. So, and I wasn't, and it was just weird. You know what I mean? And so it was frustrating. I mean, there were times where I thought, oh, maybe this will go somewhere, but nobody, it was hard too, because I started later and I wasn't willing to work for nothing. And, when you talked about, does your business, my business acumen probably is why I didn't go anywhere, because I didn't feel that anybody respected it. And so, I don't mean everyone, but like, if the club said do 10 minutes, I did 10 minutes. If they said do 8.5, I did 8.5. If they said be there 30 minutes early, I was there 30 minutes early. I did everything. Yeah. But in this business, nobody gives a fuck. You know what I mean? It's like, you could have an entire weekend and then they decide, oh, we need to close for this weekend, and you're screwed. They don't pay you.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, you booked your time. You blocked my time. You didn't book me to actually do it. That's the bonus. But that kind of thing. So when I talk about comedy, I kind of can get real serious. So it's like, I'm not funny a lot of times when I talk about comedy.
No, and that's, that's what this podcast is about, because people who want to get in the comedy game or are at a certain level and they want to raise it up, they need to know what's ahead of them, and it's not all yucks.
I won't tell you who, but one of the people you interviewed did a set so bad in front of me once. It took I thought I had to dig out. I've never had to. I'm still thinking about the hole I had to dig out. I saw his name. It triggered me. I'm like, oh God.
You can tell me when we're not recording. I'll tell you when I'm not recording.
Nah, I don't want to tell you. He might be good now. So
yeah. Well, a lot of them get better. So as far as the comedy is concerned in your life, do you feel like that? Obviously, after you said you did it all the way up until the pandemic hit, but is it something that you're always writing and you're always thinking about, or do you just have stuff come to you? And are you working on new stuff now? What's it like for you?
I kind of switched to the podcasting, and I've turned down gigs. I'm not ready. I'm not going to go back.
Okay.
You know what I mean, I don't. The one of the I won't say this because the club cleaned up, and it's a friend of mine's club. But he asked me, "Hey, you want to do a weekend?" And I'm like, "No, I'm not ready to come back and breathe on someone else's a mic that someone was just breathing on." And they were open in 1 week and had to close back down.
Yeah,
an employee had COVID. They're fine. They're back open again, but it's like, not for $200
Yeah.
And then the other place, hey, would you want to open? And it was too bad because it was someone I really wanted to work with, but I can't pay you, and I can only pay you $200. It was normally $300. It's been $300 for 18 years. And I'm like, dude, I would work for free for you, but I'm not paying $200. I'm not getting $200 to get COVID and lose my smell.
Right. Yeah, no doubt.
I don't need it.
Yeah.
So so the podcast became the thing that, I write bits. I don't just go right into the interview. You know what I mean? And I don't, my interviews, if you listen to the Bob Zaney one, I never know how to, comedians, you never know. It's a different kind of sparring. And so, you can see that if you listen to that, you can tell, maybe if you play it back in your head, I started sparring a little bit or pushing back a little harder in a fun way towards the end of that, right, the second half. Because I realized what he wanted or what would work.
Yeah.
But it's like I was interviewing somebody yesterday. He goes, the guy goes, I realized I didn't let you jump in. And I'm like, I'm not interviewing you to hear me talk.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's that kind of thing. So
yeah, I always tell people when I do my editing, if I see too much stuff on my track and not enough on the guest, that means I failed. So that's a big deal for me. So thinking about the podcast, because it's funny because I listened to about a third of the Bob Zaney episode and it felt just like my last Bob Zaney episode. So I went to the Carl Gottlieb one. And what was it like to interview somebody who was such an obvious hero of yours?
No, Carl was great. The difference with Carl was it was more of an interview than a kind of a reflection type thing. Right. So like he says in the interview, it was a job. So when you or I fanboy over something, we don't want to believe it was a job. Yeah. We don't want to believe that the jerk was accidental.
You co-wrote the fucking jerk. Come on.
Right. We don't want to believe that was just a happenstance.
Yeah.
Right? So, so that was, but he's a legend. So it's like, it was just kind of one of those things. So, but no, he was super nice, and I'd send him stuff after, and he autographed it and sent it right back. And
cool.
He was really cool. That's one of my favorite ones because he kind of pushed me a bit in terms of making sure I really kind of thought about what I was asking.
Right.
Because I think a lot of times we're loose. We ask a loose question because we know the person will just start yapping. Right?
Yeah.
I'd love to talk to him again, actually.
Yeah.
So
Cool. Yeah. I think he's on the list of people that are going to end up on mine. So I just wanted, I'm listening to all of those first so that I can get ready.
You know, that's what I do. I listen to other people's mostly because I want to see if I can go in a different direction.
Yeah.
Really. You know, so, but he's interesting. He's old school and he's worked with these amazing people, and, you know, it was great. You know, I got the couple things out about Jaws that I wanted to ask him, you know, and, you know, but we talked a lot more about his improv background. You know, the guy's just a funny guy. I mean, he came up with Steve Martin, Rob Reiner, Bob Einstein, that's Super Dave Osborne, and, you know, just he wrote for the Smothers Brothers. And it's like, it's insane. You know,
you seem so young.
Degree.
You seem so young to know that stuff.
Well, I interviewed him. That's how I know.
Yeah.
I'm not where I'm the benefit of podcasting is everyone thinks I look a lot younger than I do. Someone's like, I have a friend. I'm going to send him your picture. See, you can see what you're going to look like when you're 43. I'm like, dude, I'm way past 43. He's like, oh, then my friend must look like crap.
Oh, that's great. So let's get into the meat of what I wanted to. I think you're going to be a good teacher of this. So comedians, first off, they do a lot of their own promotion. Second, they all start a podcast. It seems to be the natural progression for them. And you very early on understood the benefits of social media and how you can turn that to your advantage. And the Little Caesars stuff is, you know, that's stuff of legend right there. And the fact that you did that is very important, and I'm very glad in your podcast that you put those tidbits of knowledge out. But let's talk about a comedian who is, you know, they're really wanting to get started. Maybe they started a podcast or something like that. What would you say would be the best first steps they could take as far as social media is concerned?
Sure. Well, one is you kind of got to dip your toe into a few different areas, you know. So where I've had the most success personally on Twitter, you know, I try hard on the other ones, you know. I have personal success on Facebook, and by what I mean by that is my friend group. You know what I mean? Like I have, like, I'll say stuff, and like if I get political or be funny, the people I know will react to that. And, you know, on Instagram, I try really hard. I really do. But it's funny because I have another friend named Nate who goes on Twitter and does okay on Twitter, but then he takes a picture of that, and he's amassed over 10,000 followers, and he just puts a picture of his tweet on Instagram, and it freaking blows up.
Yeah,
like blows up.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so I actually started. I had to redo all my kind of accounts just as I was starting to do the podcast. I like, you know, but I think you just have to kind of try. So if you were to focus on Twitter for a second, which I think it should be the comedian's best friend, Twitter, because it's words and it's edited words, right? It's short form words, which is, if you're not good at editing and short form words, you're probably something you need to work on as a comedian.
Right.
But so it really kind of plays to our strengths to be funny with very few words. So what I found very early on from comedians, and I started this way too, but if you look at my timeline or my page, it's not just me. You know what I mean? What I find is a lot of comedians and a lot of people also that say, Twitter doesn't work for me. Everyone's doing so much better than me. It's like, well, because you're just dropping it on your page, right? And let's say you have 1,000 followers. Let's just say you have 1,000 followers, right? So when you post something, right, and you have 1,000 followers, maybe 5% might see it, right? So that's 1,000 followers. That's 50 people might see it, might, right? Yeah. So when you get a like or two, you're kind of beating the odds. It doesn't feel good. It's like going to the nickel slot machine and putting in a nickel and winning 10 cents. You know, percentage wise did better there than you'll ever do in the real market.
Yeah.
Right. But it doesn't feel good because it's only 10 cents.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So on Twitter, it's about engaging, and which really is kind of the same on Facebook and Instagram, I think, whereas you got to find your community and then really engage and actively be a part of them. You have to like other people. You have to retweet things. If you're like, oh, I want people to come to my timeline and see how funny I am. Well, okay. Well, don't worry about that. Show them what you think is funny too, because you have to provide value. And sometimes the value isn't just your words. It can be what other people are saying too. You know what I mean? If someone shares with you a recipe in real life that you then make the rest of your life, you never forgot who shared it with you. You know what I mean? So it's like there's little things like that help. And frankly, when you put something out, not that it's a tit for tat type thing, but when you share other people's stuff, other people are more likely to share your stuff. It's about either being selfish or not selfish. Think about that and just apply that to the real world. If someone's a selfish son of a bitch, you don't go out of your way to help them. If they're giving, then you go out of your way to help them, right? Or engage with them or share something they did. It's a simple philosophy. It really is. And so that's what it kind of comes down to. And Twitter is, I think, the best for that. With hashtag Roundup, what I found is the kind of the power of the hashtags. Now, people like talk about hashtags. Like, I'm not talking about hashtags like people are talking about hashtags like when they go to Instagram. Oh, you got to use the right hashtags and, blah, 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 blah. What we do with hashtag Roundup is we create moments. So like every hour, and I encourage anyone to go grab the hashtag Roundup app. It's on the App Store. It's on Apple and Google. It's free. It's free. I made it, but I gave it away for free. And so every like hour or 90 minutes, there's a new hashtag that comes out. And I don't mean like Monday motivation. I mean like something fun, something like, let me look, something like, odd jobs for Jason Voorhees. That's one that we just did, right? Or when I need a moment of relief, or cheer up Donald Trump. So, those are the types of things. So what those are, right, from a comedy point of view, is that's a premise. And so what a lot of people don't know what to do or can't think of is, what should I tweet? What should I even engage with? Well, we offer premises, and hopefully they're broad enough, that you can go, oh, I can contribute to that. And then part of the entire process is, as you contribute, other people share yours, you share theirs, and you're kind of doing it at the same time. And when you're using a hashtag, the benefit of using a hashtag is, if you only have 1,000 followers and I have 40,000 followers, when you click on the hashtag, it equalizes us, and everyone's going to come up that use that hashtag. So that's how I can find you, Scott Curtis. That's how you can find me, Jeff Dwoskin, when we're not actually following each other. But then we like, oh, Scott's funny. Oh, Jeff's funny. We follow each other, right? We like each other's tweets. We share each other's tweets. We kind of now get to know each other a little bit. Maybe we comment, oh, that was, whatever. And so, that's kind of how it works. And so, and it doesn't happen in one day, and it doesn't happen in a week. I've been doing it for over 5 years. If you go back to my tweets from 2013, I guess more than 5 years. If you go back to those, they don't have any likes or retweets. Okay. Right. When I was like putting out some really fun stuff, nobody was there. You know what I mean? So, but eventually somebody caught on and then saw the stuff that I did, which is the same philosophy to me with my podcast. I don't have as many listeners as I'd like. I don't think any of us would ever feel we do, but I feel like if I'm putting together a great collection of things, and I see this, people will all of a sudden, I'll see one will tick up. Everyone will tick up, right? And I'm like, oh, maybe somebody just discovered it. And then when they go from podcast, episode to episode, they're like, oh, this is good. And then hopefully they'll stick around. Right. That's sort of what I'm trying to do. So, talk to different people, kind of balance it off, talk to comedians, talk to legends like Carl Gottlieb, talk to, Bob Zanies, Aaron Cummings, actress, that kind of thing. Suze Lanier, Kelly Maroney, they all have these interesting stories, and they've all been part of something that we grew up with. Right. To me, like, it's a lot of fun to be able to talk to them and bring that around. So what I did find is like with social media, and I've actually asked a lot of people about this, other podcasters, is the worst audience to try and get to listen to your podcast seems to be your friends and family.
Oh yeah.
So
My son has never listened to one. Yeah.
And I joke, I think my wife's, I got 27 episodes right now. I think my wife's listened to 2.
Yeah.
And like, but I know like, it's hard, but then somebody will listen and then they'll stick with it. You know what I mean? So it's like, I think podcasting is still in its infancy, even though some people, I've been doing it for 7 years or whatever. It's like, I still think it's getting more mainstream now that iHeartRadio and Amazon Music and everyone's embracing it. So, but I don't think it's easier for people to, when there's 15 places to listen. I think somehow like we've tricked ourselves to think that's a good thing. And I don't think it is.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's because people get kind of deer-eyed in the headlights. It's like,
Right.
It's like, I don't know where to go.
Yeah.
I don't know. Well, usually, so that's why I just say, go to jeffisfunny.com and you can listen right there.
Yeah.
You have to go somewhere else to subscribe.
Yeah.
But you can just listen from my web browser, the web browser.
Yeah.
And that's sometimes the easiest thing. So, but that's the kind of thing. So with Instagram, I've had people kind of help me. I've tried to create like a little look, so if you see the posts, you'll see like my last 9 posts that look way different than everyone before it. And like,
I might steal some of that because I need to work on my Instagram.
Well, I'll tell you, anybody who's listening, like my secret to success is Fiverr, Fivver, I think.
I use them for a lot of stuff.
Fiverr's the greatest.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I went there at $25. I'm like, I need an Instagram template. You know what I mean? And so, they made me 4 templates, that kind of thing. So, those kind of things are so cheap. It's like embarrassing. It's hard because if you actually do that for a living, it's like,
I know
it's not good. But
do you tip them? I sometimes I tip them double what I paid for it.
Yeah, it depends what I paid. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, you can almost do anything on Fiverr. I had to make a flyer once for something. I paid a guy $25.
Yeah. Yeah. And you get your time back, and that's worth way more than 25.
Well, even if you just use it and and then tweak it from there or something like that, it's it's so worth it.
Yeah.
It's that head start you need a lot of the times.
So thinking about, I wanted to go back to Twitter and think about strategy because I'm right about 1,000 followers. I'm maybe 8 something or 9 something. And I did start trying the reposting and stuff like that, but it feels like, okay, if I were to repost something that you posted or something that, or retweet, whatever, if I were to do that for like you or Jim Gaffigan or Nate Bargatze or something like that, they don't even know. So should I be looking for people who are more on my level or just above my level to be that retweet guy for?
Why am I blanking his name? Deadpool, Ryan Reynolds.
Yeah.
Right. So I tweeted at him once. And he just liked it. He liked the tweet. And I think I got over 1,300 likes because he liked it.
Wow.
Yeah. So it doesn't hurt, but that shouldn't be your core strategy.
Yeah.
It didn't work the next time I tagged him. But here's the thing. If you go to Twitter and you click on Explore, then there's a trending area. And there's 2 types of trends. So when you're looking at trends on Twitter, a lot of times it defaults to trends for you, which means it's trends within that 800 person group of yours. Okay. That's not what you want. You want to change it to United States, or if you're in Canada, whatever. I actually have different browsers with different countries. Okay. So I have mostly Canada and US because they're close and usually one follows the other. And so what you could do is, so from a comedian point of view, our good friend Scott Baio did some Trumpy thing today. So here's the beauty of that comment. It's evergreen because he does it so often. And you don't have to worry about, oh no, that dates the podcast. Nope. And
as long as he's alive.
But here's the thing. So you don't have to tweet with hashtags to go viral. Okay.
Uh-huh.
So Scott Baio, the words Scott Baio were trending. Okay. So it was like a top 10 trend in the US. So if you see something's a top 10 trend in the US and the word is Scott Baio, write a joke. It doesn't even have to be, it'll sound good if you can tap into what actually is happening. But you could also just write a joke about Scott Baio. Make sure you spell it the same way it's trending. And now you've used the words that are trending and it'll come up with that trend. So when people search for that trend, it'll do it. It's like, I mean, not that, I do this when people die that I do care about, I don't do it for everyone, but like when you do RIP, whoever, you know what I mean? It's the same idea. And it doesn't have to be the hashtag. It can be their name that they're dying or that's trending, that kind of thing. But that's a good place to find. I do that all the time. Like Chachi's is also trending. So you can work out like some kind of joke with those words. I'm not saying this is your 100% strategy. This is your 10, 15% strategy. But you can do that. I'm telling you with hashtag Roundup, if you have the time to put in, it's a great community to get involved with. I've been doing that for 5 years. My wife, who's not even a comedian, has over 10,000 followers now.
Wow.
There's some people in there that have 20, 30, 40,000 followers. So you can really kind of pick it up. But what people are talking about, if you want to get seen, especially as a comedian, talk about what people are talking about. And that can be part of your thing. You can also just drop your jokes, you know what I mean? But you do both. You do everything. And it's like, and then when you write something, and you're like, oh, no one retweeted that. Well, here's the thing. Don't make fun of Black Lives Matter. No one's going to retweet that. You know what I mean? Like, just like be smart about what you're doing. I mean, you gotta be, it's not about, some people are like, I'm cutting edge. I'm like, okay, great. They'll read it and then they'll make an opinion of you. They'll move on. But no one's going to retweet that. And you know what I mean? Like, it just, when you make fun of certain things, it's just not going to get you anywhere because you want to be broad. You want to be true to yourself and your voice, but you also want to be not an ass, to be quite honest. And so, just be careful what you're kind of doing. It's not, people I think sometimes think it's Twitter. And it's like, no, it's real life. I mean, people are going to find these tweets. You see the cancel culture now. They're going back years finding stuff. Yeah. So
a lot of years.
So don't tweet things that you can't literally stand behind, but don't also go complain if no one's sharing it. If you want to do it, but just don't complain if like, why didn't anyone know this is gold?
Yeah.
Here's the thing. If you get tons of retweets and tons of retweets and tons of retweets and something doesn't get tons of retweets, but it's gold, those are the people that are on stage and have those ears. All the time. So you got to like think like, all right, you know what? Here's an idea. Maybe it's not gold.
Yeah.
Like,
don't blame the audience.
Just a thought. Just a thought. But maybe go.
I talk to a lot of people who use a lot of forms of social media. So you got the Twitter, the Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, just all the myriad of things. And some of them say, well, okay, Instagram works for me. So I'm just going to do Instagram and I'm going to throw everything else away. I'll keep my account, but I'm not going to do anything there. Is that a good strategy or a bad strategy?
Again, I think, my friend Nate, he creatively writes on Instagram and then it blows up on, creatively writes on Twitter and then it blows up on Instagram. So you don't have to win at every platform. I still do Instagram, even though I'm not winning on that like I do on Twitter. You know what I mean? So I think they're also very different mediums. You know what I mean? Like Twitter, Instagram is great and it happens to work for him, but it's not a medium where you just post words. You know what I mean? It's a visual medium, so if you're going to do the videos or now they have like the thing like TikTok on Instagram, the reels, you can do that, but I think there's kind of a test for anything. Twitter is great just to test out and see if you can get a reaction on some things that you could then build up into other ideas and stuff like that. Twitter is what's happening now.
Right.
You know what I mean? Here's the other thing with Twitter is where you can get noticed by BuzzFeed or other things, right? I have a page on my website that I have to finish because I didn't finish porting it over. But I mean, I've had tweets in almost every single major publication, read on the news, because when you talk about something that's happening, they go to Twitter to fill content. People don't write articles on, here's 10 posts on what people are talking about on National Pizza Day from Instagram. It's just, they don't do that. It's always Twitter.
Yeah.
So as a comic, I think you need to be on Twitter. And it's like, I just think you do. It's just, there's no downside to it, other than the same kind of work. And it's less work because there's no images. You don't have to do images.
Right. Yeah.
It's just your words,
Yeah. So let's pretend like, so I've got this podcast and everything I do centers around the podcast. And if you look at my logo, I am nowhere to be found as far as a logo. So I'm not personally branding anything. I change it to Behind the Bits with Scott Curtis because somebody recommended that I do that. But I did that purposefully because I did not want it to be about me. So I want it to be about my guests. So let's say I want to be a successful comedian, which that's not even the cards, but let's say that I wanted to do that. Should I create separate accounts in order to achieve that? Or can you do everything from one account?
That's a great question. You can do everything from one account. I have a separate account, for the Jeff Dwoskin show, so they can be just that stuff because it would get lost on my personal account. And sometimes I might be political on my personal account. Maybe I don't want that on the podcast account. You know what I mean? So it depends how intermingled your voice is and what you're trying to do or say.
Okay.
But also keep in mind, you may not always do the podcast, or you may change the podcast. So it doesn't hurt to have, sometimes people may not want to connect with a business, calling a podcast a business for a second. But so it doesn't hurt to have Scott Curtis have his own account so that people know, what it is. I
do have my own account. I don't know if I remember the password or anything, but I think I do have my own account.
I think you can do password recovery.
Yeah.
I named my show the Jeff Dwoskin Show because I wanted people to know it was my show.
Right. And you're somebody who is you're more of a brand yourself just because of the things you've created and just your Twitter followers alone. You're a brand yourself. I am not. So I wanted to make the fact that this is a serious talk about stand-up comedy, the brand, because I'm obviously not going to sell it. I mean, someday, who knows?
Someday. Well, you did win that award.
Yeah, so I know. Okay. Yeah, I got a JPEG. Yeah, I really do think about that because I've never felt that I've been super successful at any social media, but I've dabbled in it and I've never put a concerted effort into any one. And so I think after talking to you, I think I'm going to try Twitter and see what I can do with that. Yeah,
it just only because people kind of might look for you there also. I know you have a Twitter account because you followed me today, but or at least the podcast does. Yeah. So it doesn't hurt. It legitimizes it a little bit too, right? Yeah. So it's a thing. Here's its home, that's why I have a website for it too. Not everyone has a website for it, but I converted my old comedy website. That's why jeffisfunny.com takes you to that site. That used to be my comedy site, when I was doing stand up nonstop. But, once this became who I was, I just kind of converted that over. So made it more about the show than that. So, plus you can, we didn't talk about search engine optimization, and getting it out there that way too, which is, why one of the reasons I kind of created the website. So it doesn't do a lot, but maybe one day.
Yeah. SEO, backlinks, all that stuff. It's fun.
Yes.
Hashtags. It's just nuts. It's just amazing all the stuff you have to do. So thinking about where you're going. Obviously, comedy is not a number one for you, but you've learned a lot from it. What would you say is the best advice you got from a stand-up comedian?
Oh, the best advice?
Yeah.
Two things. One, Mary Ellen Hooper was a comedian that I was working with, and she kind of saw me doing my act, and she was like, Jeff, you're doing like all this father stuff and family. You're the frustrated father, and then you're doing observational jokes as well. And she's like, get rid of it all. Get rid of all the observation. Just be the father. And it goes, that's who you are. Just do it. Anyone can do observational. The issue with observational too is, that's where you get people fighting over, I came up with that joke.
Yeah.
Well, everyone saw the same stop sign, and there's only so many directions you can go with something.
Yeah.
So it's like when you create something that is from something generic, it's, then it's likely that someone else thought of it as well, or will think of it. Right. And so, when you start drawing off your own experiences, those things only happen to you.
Yeah.
And so, that kind of makes you more unique. But okay, here I thought of one. Okay, this was a good one. So this is what changed my comedy life. Okay, I had all these bits, all these like 2-minute bits, and when you're starting out, it was hard. I would on my watch. You mentioned like I have such a corporate background. I purposely went out and bought a $10 Kmart watch.
Yeah.
And would wear that. I called it my comedy watch. I didn't want to wear my expensive watch. But like I would put the thing on my wrist, and I would write down the things because I was petrified of forgetting.
Right. Yeah.
Because there were so many bits that you write. And somebody was talking about Norm Stoltz, who's a great comedian, and he was like, he's a great storyteller, and he's like, well, but they all started out as little bits, and then he strung them together. I'm like, oh, that's brilliant. So I'm like, I started taking all these bits that I had that were sort of independent of each other, and I created a thread so that one could be into this. Oh, this joke about this necklace, that could be a joke from something I gave my wife, so it's like, and then it could be, so all of a sudden, like I have this birth routine, and like, so all of a sudden the birth routine became these 5 different routines, but now it's easy to remember because it's all one narrative. I changed some of the way I would tell some of those other jokes so it fit into the narrative. 95% of it stayed the same. It's just maybe the kind of lead into it, just so it was relevant. But then all of a sudden it's easy to remember a 7-minute bit, because instead of 7 different bits, because they all kind of go into each other. They all work together. And when they work together, it actually is better for the audience because they're now coming along. They don't have to keep resetting every time you start a new joke, so you just keep building on the same things. But they're all individual things, but it's just how you're packaging and selling it. Right. And then the other thing that I was told, which was by Jim Wiggins, who Phyllis Diller told him this. So indirectly, this is from Phyllis Diller. Yeah. But he said, he saw me, he was working with me, and he was like, I would look above the audience. And because it was one way to kind of deal with being on stage and being in front of so many people, I would look above them. He's like, I noticed you look above the audience, Jeff. He's like, I'm like, yeah. He's like, can't do that. You got to look them in the eye. Got to look them right in the eye. And he goes, and you'll get the laugh. You're going to get the laughs. And he's like, and even if you don't get the laugh, you'll get a laugh because you're looking at them in the eye. You're creating that connection with them. And then I started doing that. And it was almost like magic. It was like you look at someone, especially like when you get fixated with the person who isn't laughing, and any comic knows what I'm talking about there, right? The one guy. And it's like, if you look at them, it would become like a video game in my head where I'd look at them in the eyes and I'd tell the joke right to them. And it works still because the audience feels you're looking at them because you're looking at one person, you're connecting through one person. And then they would laugh or smile. And in my head, I would picture like a little ding, like a little Mario coin.
You got a coin,
and so I was like, all right, I got that one. And then once you get them once, you won them over, and then you just keep going. And so And that would be the kind of thing that I would do. And that kind of, I realized losing the fear of looking at them in their face is like what kind of really transformed and made me unstoppable on stage. It was like once you completely lose the fear, it's like, it's crazy.
Yeah.
Which kind of goes back to like the other thing in terms of, you asked me earlier during the live one about some of the things that helps during business. And one of the main things is presenting. Is being able to either present directly to an audience or someone you're pitching a deck to, or in front of an entire group. Because like when I get up at a company and talk to an entire group, they'd always say, if someone was presenting, they'd always be like, don't put me after Jeff.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so you're the headliner in all the presentations.
Well, it's just because they're scared. They've never done it before. I'm walking out there. I don't need a script. I didn't need to practice. I didn't need to do anything that normal people would, because I'm coming from a different place.
Yeah.
So, and then you do your thing, and it's like the confidence sells. That's the other thing, right? Comedy's 95% confidence.
Yeah.
So, so I think it helps in lots of ways.
Yeah.
So.
I got to say, when you talked about the fact that you went from the observational mixed with the Family Guy stuff, I'm in a totally conflicted situation myself on that, because I've got a ton of observational stuff about boomers and boomers using social media and stuff like that, and it kills. But I've got all my family stuff too, and they're two separate things, and they don't necessarily go together. And
so you make the boomer your grandpa.
Yeah.
Right. So you slightly change the narrative of the joke. And then it makes it even more personal, right? And so you could still do the joke, you just change the characters in the joke to fit the larger narrative of who you are as just a family person.
Right. Yeah.
Now you're creating something that they can relate to.
Yeah.
And make it your mother-in-law, and it'll be gold. You know what I mean? So that's what I was talking about earlier, when you start tweaking things, and it's like, just change the frame of the joke. It's just you don't have to get stuck on how you wrote it originally. Just, as you adapt, you can adapt the stuff that's adaptable. You can adapt to how you want it, the new you on stage. So.
Isn't it funny, even though you're not thinking about comedy, you still got all that in your head and you can talk about it?
Yeah.
It never goes away.
No. The greatest skill that a comedian has is to be able to having a full conversation and have a full conversation with yourself in the back of your head while you're engaged or presenting or doing something.
Yep.
You can actually start thinking, all right, what comes next? What comes next?
Yep. That's true multitasking. That's the only way to do it. That's great. So I really appreciate you talking to me today. This has been very enlightening, and I'm going to hit my Twitter hard just based on what you said. So watch me, retweet me.
You can send me a DM. I don't see it, because I don't look at that feed very often, just because there's so much in there. But if you shoot me something, I'll retweet it.
Oh, that's nice.
Or tell you why I didn't.
Yeah. So just one more time, I want to make sure people know where to find you. Can you go over your socials and your website again?
Sure. The show can be found pretty much, Apple, Amazon Music, Google, Spotify, anywhere those can be found. And so, if you want to go there, subscribe, that'd be great. JeffDwoskinshow.com. I'm sure Scott will put all this in the notes too, but like JeffDwoskinshow.com or JeffIsFunny.com. That's the website. At Jeff Dwoskin Show on Twitter and Instagram is how you can find the show. And I'm at Big Macher, which is in the also on Instagram and Twitter. BIGMACHER.
Okay, great. Well, this was a lot of fun. If you got a second, I'll tell you my Bob Zaney story, because it's podcast related.
Go ahead.
Okay. So before I did this podcast, I did a local podcast for almost 6 years. It was called Michiana People. And I talked to people from all over the Michiana area, but Bob was going to perform at the local comedy club. And I'm a huge fan. I've been seeing him since the 80s and probably 7-8 times. And, absolutely love him. So I set up the interview. I hit him up on Facebook. He said, yeah, I'll do an interview. And I hit him up on Facebook, and he was living in California at the time. And for some reason, I had in my head that California was 2 hours behind us instead of 1 hour. So he's got my number. He calls me. He says, hey, we're going to do this interview. I was an hour late. Are we going to do this interview? And I'm like, oh, no. So I got it set up real quick, and we did the interview. And I had a totally different setup. I was audio only and all that. But we did the interview. And then when I started this podcast, I hit him up, and he was one of my earlier interviews. And he's in Vegas now. And I made the same stupid mistake. I've been on time for every single interview I've done, except for that one. I made an hour mistake. He calls me and he says, hey, are we going to do this interview? I'm like, yeah, let me get set up. So one of the guys I like the most, one of my favorite comedians, is the one I screwed over twice on an interview, but he was still nice enough to do it.
I used to have these black shoes and then deep burgundy shoes. And in the dark, which is why most superheroes have dark colors, is in the dark, everything looks dark, right? So I would get ready for work, and those shoes look the same in the dark, right? So one time I came to work and I wore one black and one burgundy shoe. And then I had this interview with this guy, Ron, and then the only other time I ever did it was months later. Also had a meeting with the same guy. And it was just funny.
I'll have to tweet I'll let you retweet one real quick. I'll have to tweet the picture I have in my office when I was wearing a black and a brown shoe. Very similar. So, except for brown is not deep burgundy, and I just wasn't even looking. I just put them on. I knew it was left and right, and I went to work. Well, this has been great. I learned a lot from you, and I hope you don't mind that I keyed on the social media stuff more than anything, but I think that's a real good thing that comics can put in their toolkit.
No, happy to be here. Thanks for having me, Scott.